respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel once again. So I'm talking about the sabotage on the Nord Stream pipelines just a few days ago. So Western governments have generally pointed the finger at Russia, and it's not hard to see why. But first of all, what are these pipelines? Where are they? So they're from Russia. They leave near St. Petersburg. They go under the Baltic Sea, and they come on shore at Greifswald, Germany. They pass through Danish territorial waters. I'm not sure it's the territorial waters of anywhere else. NATO, the European Union, the International Atomic Identity Authority, and so on, they've all said that it's blatant that Russia did this on the 29th of September. But the Kremlin, surprise, surprise, is saying, "Oh, not us! No, no, no! We would never break international law. We would never massacre thousands of civilians in Ukraine. We would never try and poison somebody with Novichok in Salisbury, something like that. We have never carried out many chemical weapons attacks in Syria, and so we've never killed thousands of our own civilians in Chechnya. We've never used torture. We've never cheated in elections. We've never held sham referendums. We've never invaded an illegal country illegally, despite promising we're not going to do so numerous times, and on and on and on." So who would be imbecilic enough to believe the Kremlin? But just because the Kremlin has lied on many, many occasions, this obviously doesn't prove they're lying right now, because the future is not always conformable to the past. Russia's taken perhaps a surprising démarche of convening a United Nations Security Council session to talk about this incident. So, who done it? Well, who would have the motive, means, and the opportunity? Anyway, the pipelines, they both suffered severe pressure drops on the 26th of September this year. So 3 separate leaks occurred off the littoral of Sweden and Denmark, and these were only about 30 kilometers apart. So both pipelines of the Nord Stream pipeline were affected, and one of the pipelines of Nord Stream 2 was affected. The seismologists in Scandinavia said it seems that there were large explosions involving over 100 kilograms of TNT. So that is not an accident. There's no way it's an accident. I don't know of any pipeline ever, anywhere in the world, has ever experienced anything like that. So this is liquefied natural gas which is being sent, and fortunately that doesn't damage the ecosystem very much, both the maritime biome and the land biome. Nevertheless, this methane is a potent greenhouse gas that's come out. It's thought to be something like 500 million cubic meters of gas that's been lost. So that's a lot of carbon dioxide, and that is something like a 5,000th of all world CO2 emissions annually have suddenly been leaked. So for EU countries which care deeply about the environment, I don't think it's going to be them. So the damaged sections could be repaired in a matter of months. You can send out a repair fleet, but the seabed work itself isn't that difficult. You'd have to pump out water because the pipeline's at 1,200 kilometers long. Now, obviously, not all of it's going to have water in it. There is rock debris which needs to be taken away, and there's also the polymer coating which need to be repaired, and that's not enough to withstand the seawater being in there for months and months. So it could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And so Gazprom spilt this really, but now Gazprom, so Nord Stream Allgemeine Gesellschaft is a Swiss registered company, and it's the one that runs the pipeline. So there's pipeline, subsea, and the repair intervention pool could sort it out. There's a Norwegian company, Equinor, is behind that. But remember, Nord Stream 2 was sanctioned by the United States a few years ago, and the pipeline was laid by Russian ships. The United States did not want this to go ahead. It was said they thought that then Russia would have Western Europe by the short and curlies. And there was also a less altruistic motive, the ulterior motive was also to sell more American LNG in Europe. Anyway, so the pipeline was to pick up a lead in 2021, but never went online. The Germans were insisting on various safety checks, hadn't verified that it met all their standards, and then the war broke out in February, and they put the kibosh on that permanently. So the repair work would need a permit from the Danish government, and would this be forthcoming? The Danes probably wouldn't grant it. given the current political situation. So Nord Stream 2 is going to get worse and worse. So there are all these explosions, and is it probable that there'll be three explosions close together on the same pipeline on the same day? That is, talk about a black swan event, that is virtually impossible. So it was surely sabotage, but who is the saboteur? It could have been done numerous ways. There could have been depth charges dropped from a ship, or there could have been frogmen in there. There could have been submarines involved. I don't know. A pipeline inspection gauge, a pig going inside it could have done it. That goes inside it anyway, also to remove any grit that's built up. This is a fairly large-scale operation involving multiple sites and significant quantities of explosives. So people are saying, could non-state actors be behind that? But that sort of conjecture seems very improbable. So there have been drone sightings around here for several months. So EU officials and American officials and energy companies thought that Russia was planning something even months ago. Well, years ago, Russian warships seen near various cables near the United Kingdom. People think they're preparing to attack that. So who is the culprit? Now, there's plenty of shipping passing through the Baltic Sea, but who does this kind of thing, cyber attacks and all sorts of sabotage, trying to hack elections? It's the Ruskies again and again and again, is the malign actor. Unsurprisingly, the Kremlin's attack dog, Maria Zakharova, who comes up with the most ludicrous lies all the time. She says that these countries, Denmark and Sweden, are totally controlled by American intelligence. Well, they're not, which is not very cooperative, particularly the Swedes. For decades, refused the blandishments of NATO, only recently applied for it. So Tucker Carlson, who's this Fox News host in the United States, a complete shill for the Kremlin, says, oh, Putin would have to be imbecilic to blow up his own energy pipeline. Well, he is imbecilic. That'd be suicidal. Well, to some extent he is. Look at this failing war he's launched. He's not made peace when he could have done, saying that he wouldn't do it. But I was thinking about this earlier today. One of the few cards that Russia's got left to play is say, we're going to cut off all energy from Western countries, sell not a drop of oil or gas for a few months, and have the price go sky high. That would damage the Russian economy as well. Yes, but Putin thinks his people are willing to suffer, and he's got state control, total control of the media. It's a police state. People have no rights, total control of the electoral system, so they don't have a vote in effect. And they've suffered worse in the 90s, so they can live through it. And these soft, lazy, cowardly Westerners will break because they're decadent, and they'll give in, they'll moan, no, it costs too much for energy. And he could be right, actually. So anyway, these acts of sabotage, they took place shortly after Putin's tub-thumping 21st of September allocution, which he announced the mobilization of 300,000 reservists, that he alluded darkly to weapons of mass destruction and so on. So Nord Stream pipeline stopped functioning earlier in September this year, and the gas supplies have been wound down, going down and down for a year. Russia coming up with various spurious excuses to do that, to try and make European countries desperate, so they would be beseeching the Russians to carry on selling oil and gas, and therefore they would let Russia get away with aggressing Ukraine. But anyway, so remember, Nord Stream 2 never came online. But Western European countries did not think that the gas supplies were going to resume in the foreseeable future, and they were going to be less valuable because the EU and other Western European countries are trying to find gas from anywhere else apart from Russia. And remember, renewable energy is increasing like 2% a year in many of these countries. I know that's not very fast, but the day can be foreseen when they won't use any oil or gas or coal at all, even if it's not 20 years away, it's like some people like to think. All right. So, and it might be into something without much value, might be a big white elephant, really. So why would Russia carry this out? Are they cutting off their own nose to spite their face? As I say, partly to really try and strangle Western economies, try and bring them to their knees. It could be also a warning. We can do this to other assets, to other undersea pipelines and cables. And in 2021, Putin even said that the following to some of his military officers: if our Western colleagues continue an obviously aggressive stance, we will take appropriate retaliatory military technical measures and react harshly to unfriendly steps. I want to emphasize that we had every right to do so. Close quotation. So that's one of the military technical measures. And that's what they said, military technical measures right before they invaded Ukraine. One of the obvious things to do without actually declaring war is to sabotage their infrastructure, to blow up their pipelines. And by a cyber attack, they took a pipeline offline in the United States last year. So I think this is a unsubtle hint of what will be to come, giving the West a foretaste that if you don't do what we order, then we'll do this elsewhere. And the West is too pusillanimous, is not hitting back and blowing stuff up. Their pipelines taking Norwegian gas to the United Kingdom and to mainland Europe, and likewise. There's a Baltic pipeline from Norway to Poland, and so perhaps they're also warning the Poles, who per capita mean I think the second biggest donor of weapons to the Ukrainians, that if you continue to arm our foe, then you can pay a price for it, and we can blow up that pipeline. And then they think there's some sort of plausible deniability. Was it an accident? Who did it? So even when they're caught red-handed, they will lie and lie and lie. But actually, Gazprom will benefit because it's driving gas prices sky high. I mean, even if they're not selling to Europe, to other markets, they can invoke a force majeure clause anyway, so they don't have to pay compensation for volumes that weren't delivered. But how about Nord Stream 2? Because this argument is disapplied to Nord Stream 2. The consortium companies there say that, well, Gazprom thought that they might get some insurance for damaged pipelines. But it was going to be a stranded asset, so perhaps that's a relatively good outcome in the circumstances for Gazprom. You know, so it means gas production. That's the Russian semi-state gas company, obviously very closely linked with Putin and Kremlin circles. So if Nord Stream is not providing gas to Western Europe, then that, in a way, actually is good for Ukraine, because Ukraine was always worried that there was a certain duality we impose on Europe. You either support Ukraine or you buy Russian gas, because otherwise the Ruskies will cut you off that gas totally. And the Europeans would prize their own economies above Ukraine's survival. But now that's not the case, as really Ukraine is the only route. Well, I suppose there's a pipeline through Belarus. I'm not sure that's even being used. The only route for Russian gas. So bizarrely, Russian gas is only getting to Western Europe via Ukraine. So options have narrowed, but Russia can't easily resume gas sales to Western Europe. They thought, well, there'll be a quid pro quo, you know, if we're some sort of peace deal, and then it'll boost the Russian economy, boost Western economies. Anyway, Russia also wouldn't want to be bound into contracts for relatively low prices as the prices are going sky high. So Russia could increase gas supplies to Europe. There's a non-commissioned pipeline, Nord Stream 2, that they could start using. That wasn't actually blown up. There's the Yamal Europe pipeline from northern Russia, and in total that's got 60 billion cubic meters capacity per year. So that's about 40% of pre-war volumes. Okay, not what people would like, but it'd be a lot better than what they're getting now. But remember, the Yamal pipeline goes via Poland, and Poland is stalwartly behind Kyiv. So who did this? As I say, I would bet the house that it's Russia, but no, I can't prove it. It's also an unfalsifiable hypothesis. Cui bono? I mean, it's clearly Russia, even though in some ways it's damaged them, which is a good way of covering their tracks. But Putin doesn't really care about the economy, anything to win the war, and he's increasingly desperate, as one of the few things left he can do. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.